All right, so let's continue with part three of the WisEye Julian Bradley interview. We're still dealing with COVID, but now we're hopping into the idea of helping out hospitals.
Okay. We've seen the role that hospitals, Wisconsin, and nationally have played in the COVID 19. If you're a state senator voting on the next budget, do you think hospitals deserve an even greater priority than they may have in the current budget?
No, right now, so the hospitals currently have almost $500 million in reserves. Right now, that was as part of the CARES Act, I believe, right? So they have some money sitting in reserves that's been untapped. What an even bigger
All right, I'm going to stop him there. I don't know what the $500 million he's referring to is. I did some quick research and wasn't able to find an easy reference, at least. What I did find is there was $40 million from the state through the CARES Act, and there's the possibility of $1.7 billion in advances. So perhaps that's the half a billion, or from there is the half a billion he was referring to. But I'm honestly not sure, and I'm not saying he's wrong. I just wasn't able to easily find what he was referring to, so I'd be curious about it. What I can tell you is hospitals have lost billions of dollars. Doesn't necessarily mean that they've lost billions of dollars in profit, but certainly billions of dollars in revenue. So also, this was from July 30th. It's now September 29th, so we're a couple months further along. Things have continued to be fairly slow, although they've opened up a little bit more. But I think given that the hospitals and our medical staffs are really our first line of defense, and at the moment we're seeing yet another spike here in Wisconsin, I think it's critically important that we consider how we're going to help them out and make sure that they can help us out. All right, let's continue.
problem that I think would solve not just revenue, but patient care. We had a situation throughout this pandemic where hospitals were turning away patients that needed critical care. That's a major concern to me. I've talked to some people.
Okay, I'm going to again interrupt here. Hospitals were not turning away patients that needed critical care or emergency care. Let's be really, really clear on that. They were turning away patients that needed elective procedures or wanted elective procedures, and arguably there were definitely people that were turned away that had more serious issues, but that their physicians felt that they could wait. But in no way were patients that needed critical or emergency care being turned away.
That had to put off surgeries that they desperately needed and follow-up appointments that they needed because they weren't allowed to get into. They weren't able to get in to see their doctors. They weren't able to schedule these surgeries. We can't allow that to happen. We need our hospitals to open up fully. I think the best resolution for getting them the funding they need is to allow them to open up fully, safely, and responsibly, and see the patients that need the care. Once we're able to do that, we're checking a couple boxes. We're getting people the care they need, and the hospital will get the revenue that they need.
Okay. Fully, safely, and responsibly. How do you do that in the middle of a pandemic? This is part of the problem is that the GOP and Julian haven't had any ideas or suggestions other than the pandemic isn't really a problem. Just go ahead and fully open up. How do you fully open safely in the middle of a pandemic? So, one of the things that's been kind of cool about running for office is we've had these opportunities to meet with and interact with experts in a wide variety of fields. And last week, the Medical College of Wisconsin hosted a presentation, interactive. It was hosted by Dr. John Raymond, who's the president and CEO of MCOW. And they also, I'm not going to delve deeply into it, but they also got into the psychological aspects of COVID, which was really, really fascinating and truly and critically important. I'm not going to hit that. We'll save that for a different topic. But I just want to talk about how COVID is kind of affecting the hospitals, and this was a large part of their concern. So the R number, and this was as of September 23rd, it's now the 29th, and things have worsened actually in Wisconsin. I'll pull that data up in a minute. The R number, which is the rate of reinfection, rate of infection from one person, is at 1.18, which means that one person is infecting more than one person, which makes it spread. The positivity level of 16.9 means of the cases, or of the people being tested, 17% right now are coming back as positive. The target is, of course, under 5. And you'll see down here that the Wisconsin average daily new cases is 1889. Now, I'm going to pull up the current data. So this is from the state of Wisconsin. as of the 29th, and you can see that not only are we climbing for our 7-day averages and our 14-day averages, but I'm going to scroll down here. You can clearly see the peak that's coming up, and we're now at 2255 instead of the 17 or 1800. So the 7-day average is growing pretty tremendously. And I want to show you where Julian was when we were talking about this. So this is on 7:30. So the daily, the average case was 7-day cases was 887. So we're two and a half times that. And we were kind of at a peak there. And at that peak is when he was saying that hospitals should fully open. It just doesn't make any sense. Admittedly, we dipped for a while after that, which was terrific. Brought our 7-day average down to 674. And then as schools have reopened and quite frankly, people have chosen not to wear masks, now we've obviously spiked back up to 2,200 a day. So Dr. Raymond was actually really quite concerned about this. And he talks about it in here, and again, this is a week ago, so hospitalizations are increasing. Beds are currently adequate. ICU is increasing. Beds are currently adequate. Ventilators, adequate. PPE supply, improving, which implies that it's not great, but at least it's improving. And deaths have been stable. But again, that's a lagging indicator. We're going to expect deaths to increase at least slightly. We're doing a far, far better job when it comes to fatalities. I think he said in here that the current fatality rate in Wisconsin is down to 1.1%. And of course, we've been up over 3, 4, 5% earlier. One of the things that was really interesting was his insight into all of this. Obviously, they've got an awful lot more information than most of us do. And his estimate was that we'll probably be somewhere in the 0.7 to 1.0 range, so about 10 times more deadly than the flu. But seeing all of these numbers spike is a big concern for them, and it's a big concern for the hospitals, and consequently it's keeping them from being able to do those kind of elective surgeries that are profitable for them. So I think as legislators, we're going to have to try to figure out how to help the hospitals. Hopefully the federal government jumps in. Obviously the first couple of CARES Acts had stuff going on. Hopefully there'll be a third round that will continue to help both the states as well as businesses, organizations, individuals. But for Julian to just flat out say no, and to say that basically there's really nothing to worry about, that hospitals should just get back to being fully open, quite frankly, is ridiculous. So I'm disappointed in that quite frankly, he's not taking this very seriously. And the other thing that I thought interesting is when he was critical of Governor Evers, he commented about the fact that we should be listening to experts. Well, the experts are the ones that run the hospitals, and what they're saying is that they cannot fully open because they're concerned about COVID. They're concerned about it for their patients, they're concerned about it for their staffs, and they're concerned about it from a beds availability in a scenario where they become overwhelmed. So consequently, they're taking things very cautiously, but that's very expensive. So I disagree with Julian. I think that at the state level, we're probably going to have to do something again. Hopefully it comes from the federal level. It makes our lives easier. But we definitely need to delve into a way to help out the hospitals and to realize and recognize and acknowledge that COVID is really pretty serious.